entire universe shakes and crumbles as Goku and Lord Beerus continue their epic battle of gods in this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super. Color me surprised, it looks like Goku and Beerus are going to be having a 4-part fight in the Battle of Gods arc, or at least that's the way it's been going so far. I honestly thought that the battle between Goku and Beerus was going to end in this week's episode, but no, again, this was still just a mere warm-up as both Beerus and Goku continue to power themselves up. This week's episode of Dragon Ball Super was really damned classic. It really had everything that made Dragon Ball Z such an amazing phenomenon back in the day. Great fighting choreography, ridiculously overpowered ki attacks, and lots of screaming. My favorite thing about this week's episode of DBS is that Goku and Beerus have become so powerful that every single time they clash, they end up sending this distortional ripple of destruction, which goes throughout the entire universe, and according to Old Kai, if they do this about 2 to 3 times, they're going to destroy the entire universe. And he wasn't kidding, you really get to see the full effects of it. There is a planet which straight up just explodes into millions of pieces in this week's episode, which is just downright insane, because we are this early in on Dragon Ball Super, and their clashes are already destroying the very fabric of the frickin' universe. This week's episode also featured what I believe to be one of the best standoffs and power-up sequences that I've seen in the series, mostly for how unique it is. There's this great scene where both Beerus and Goku are powering themselves up, and this is something that we've seen in the series before. Someone just yelling and their ki energy manifesting into an aura around them as they get progressively more pissed off and powerful. But in this week's episode, both Beerus and Goku are able to take their ki energy, their ki god energy, and frickin' manifest it into the form of these giant dragons, which look just like Shenlong. And they fly up into the sky, they meet each other, and then they return to their owners, crashing into them, which allows them to power up even more. It's an amazing visual, and I just love that they're using more of the dragon effects, because after all, this is Dragon Ball. So how's the action in this week's episode? It's pretty hard-hitting, and honestly, I really like it. Even though they did reuse some animation shots, they still dressed them up with some brand new effects. The first couple of hits are basically them just flying towards each other and doing these big, massive punches, which end up sending the ripple throughout the universe. And a couple of times, Goku has to see this before he decides that he's going to try and evenly match Beerus' power, so that way a shockwave is never actually sent out again. But it's when they finally decide to just start getting real pissed off and flying around and actually getting into some classic Dragon Ball Z choreography that the episode really comes into its own. Visually speaking, it looks awesome. The choreography's there, it's great. I especially love every single time they do these traded blows where you see like this big line of energy just explode from their fists. It's a really nice visual, and it really just shows how powerful these guys are. There's clearly never been a battle like this in the entire series. The battle comes to a head when suddenly their power starts to destroy the universe. You start to see planets exploding, and that's because they're both using these massive ki attacks. You have Beerus who's using one of his planet destroyers, and then you have Goku who's using his classic Kamehameha. And at first it looks like Goku's getting pushed back, but because he just keeps getting stronger and stronger, he's able to use his will and his brand new god powers to push this attack right back at Beerus. And this, my friends, is still just the beginning of their battle. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super? More of Goku versus Beerus, and honestly, I think that's a cool thing. You know, they've really upped their game as the series has been going on. You know, visually speaking, I think this one is really unique. I love the setting of the battle being in the stratosphere of space. I love how Beerus has the purple energy around him and Goku has the red. It looks really eye-catching, especially when they're flying around that one time and having that great choreography fight. And there's also a little bit of room for humor in this week's episode, which I think is really appreciated. I really love the scene where Vegeta is continuing to watch the battle on the boat by straight up just looking up, just like this the entire time. And Whis even comes over and tries to use his scepter to create this sort of like intergalactic like special portal TV that he can watch the fight on, and Vegeta's not even paying attention. Whis is really helpful in this week's episode. He actually ends up saving Mr. Satan and their group when Bulma's ship ends up getting ready to crash down on top of them. There's also a little bit of stuff with Mr. Satan this week who has to continue to sort of cover his ass when the media calls him about all these ripples going on, and he claims it actually has to do with this weird, like, smuggling ring. it's pretty damn weird. It's just more classic Mr. Satan bullshit. But all of the action in this week's episode just really paid off. And like I said, there was a little bit of reused animation this week, mostly just in the big power-up scenes and a few of the clashes, but every single time they added new effects to them, so it's still not that bad. If anything, this was still a hard-hitting, action-packed episode of Dragon Ball Super, which any Dragon Ball fan should definitely check out. I think the biggest surprise for me, though, is that this is going to go into a Part 4. I really thought they were going to wrap up everything here, and I still felt that they probably could have. I'm really anxious to see where this story is going. I wonder if they're going to divert from Battle of Gods at all, because in the movie version of Battle of Gods, spoiler alert, Beerus ends up defeating Goku. And in the manga version, he also defeats Goku. I wonder if the anime version is going to break the mold and there's a small possibility that Goku is going to win, although I still have a feeling that Beerus is going to destroy him. And I'm still wondering where the hell is Champa and his attendant? We've seen them in the manga for months now, and we haven't even seen them pop up at all in the anime version. I really cannot wait to see what they are going to do with these characters and how they're going to be introduced. And so, the final word on this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super is that it was really entertaining, hard-hitting, lots of great action sequences, lots of funny moments, and this is still not the end of the battle, so we still have a lot of hype and a lot of things to get excited for. So, I really loved this episode. I didn't think the pacing was all that great, and some of the reused animation was a little cheap, but despite that, this is still a classic, badass action episode of Dragon Ball Super. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. I highly recommend that Dragon Ball fans definitely check this out. You might see something you like. Before you guys go today, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super. What do you think about the power of Goku and Beerus literally destroying the universe? What do you want to see from the last portion of their battle? Do you think it's going to extend into a 5th episode? And what do you want to see from the rest of Dragon Ball Super? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my video. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on social media. It really helps. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!